Delighted on this episode to be having a second chat with author, creator Ron Fortier. Ron, thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime, anytime. Absolutely. Always glad to talk pulps with you. Always glad to talk about the world of Brother Bones. And I spy back there behind you the Rocketeer, the Shadow. So this is very much in the world of what we're talking about with this kind of storytelling.
Oh yeah, definitely. I came out of the comic book, world. Been
Mhm.
writing comics for almost 50 years now, but pretty much tripped over pulps maybe 20 years ago by attending a pulp convention out of curiosity, and always knew the connection between um, their cousins, their cousin cousins, obviously, all right, and the pulp convention was an eye opener for me in that it seemed to be a dying fandom. I was
Mhm.
at a convention where they had 100 vendors. It was PulpCon. It was in Dayton, Ohio back then, and 100 vendors and only 60 attendees. So it
Wow.
was like, okay, and
Wow.
the average age of most of them was like 75 to 80. So you had this sense that, this isn't going anywhere fast. But anyways, I left that convention with this crazy idea of, with today's technology, on-demand publishing, desktop publishing, all that kind of good stuff, wouldn't it be fun if we could revive the pulps via small press and use public domain characters that weren't copyrighted, so it wouldn't cost us an arm and a leg, and tap into my Y network of comic book writers, asking them if they'd like to join us in this endeavor, picking out some of those, little known pulp characters. Everybody knows the Shadow, Doc Savage, the Spider, or whatever. But there's hundreds of great little pulp characters very, very few people knew about. So the idea, I thought to myself, okay, this would be fun to do, but I don't think I could do it by myself. I reached out to my dear friend Rob Davis, a professional comic book artist himself, who's been in the business almost as long as I have, and brought up the idea to Rob. Well, Rob's always loved new technology. He'd always had an itch to try his hand at small press publishing. And
Mhm.
so, God bless him, Rob signed on as our art director. And I want to say maybe it took us 2 or 3 years. We got the thing running. We got writers on board. We got artists to do interior illustrations, to do covers. We started publishing a few titles. And within 2 or 3 years, went to our first convention, which was the Windy City Paper and Pulp Convention, which is held every year in Lombard, just outside of Chicago. That first year, we had 5 books in our catalog. The locals, the fans, the diehard pulp people, um, pretty much walked by our table and looked at us as if we'd landed from an alien planet and had 3 heads. But ultimately, we started winning them over. Came back the following year with more books, got other young writers interested, got other people interested in doing what we were doing. And I want to say within the first 5 years of the launching of our company, Airship 27, there were maybe another 3 or 4 companies doing what we were doing. And we put on the tag New Pulp. And it's been flourishing ever since. Um, at the moment, Airship 27 has over 300 titles in our Amazon catalog.
Many thanks for all the work that you've done in revitalizing pulp and in drawing attention back to this world. When I think about pulps, I think about your classic heroes who have a good purpose. There might be some darkness mingled in, but there's this general good purpose. There's usually a villain, maybe a villainous society, and we have some of those comic book like story tropes, but they're kind of different in pulps at the same time.
Right. Well, Well, the thing with pulps, and I, the reason I became enamored of them, all right, is that they've, over the years gotten tagged with a lot of different adjectives. But the one I appreciated the most, I guess, was populist fare. Okay. Because pulps literally were born during the Great Depression in this country. And a lot of people don't realize that, with the millions of Americans who are out of work, right, and the factories that shut down and the dire straits the country was in, here were these, Square Digest little magazines, all right, that would pop up on the newsstands all over the country, all for just 10 cents. And you can pick up one of these pirate titles or westerns or whatever, and take it home, and maybe for a couple of hours, forget your problems, lose
Mhm.
yourself in this fantastic literature. Again, whether it was horror or mysteries or whatever, but pulps a la comics were an exaggeration literature. And it was about larger than life heroes and dastardly villains. So for its part in the history of American literature, I think it deserves a great deal of credit. It basically spawned what we now know as, after World War II, the advent of paperback, books, and of the adventure men's magazines of the 50s, 60s, and early 70s. But it was also the proving ground for some of the best American writers to come out of the mystery field, the horror fields. I mean, people like Robert Bloch, Earl Stanley Gardner, Mickey Spillane, to name dozens, literally cut their teeth in the pulps.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, those voices just speak to modern crime fiction. I mean, there's a whole chain of inspiration that we're talking about here, from literature onward into film and radio and across all sorts of media. Uh, on this episode, we're also talking about a pulp creation of yours, Brother Bones.
Correct. Um, yeah, that's what I'm hoping to get across, because as it turns out, I created Brother Bones obviously for Airship 27. It was
Mhm.
an idea after, you know, getting all these other artists and writers to work with us. We got to a point where Rob, my partner, one day basically said, "Are you going to give us anything for the company?" And I went, "Well, we reached that point where we were asking our writers to give us new pulp characters."
Mhm.
And I had been toying with the idea of the possibility of a character very, very much in the vein of the Shadow or the Spider, the Masked Avenger type, if you will, the lone gunman. But I wanted to add a horror element to it. And
Mhm.
so, out of the blue, is born Brother Grimm, the Undead Avenger. And over a period of about 2.5 years, I wrote seven Brother Bones adventures for various pulp anthologies, if you will, and other magazines that are on the market, even our own competitors, to the point of waiting till we had the seven stories and collected them in a volume, which was then titled Brother Bones, the Undead Avenger. It was the birth of the character. It included his origin story. From that book, we went on over the last 10 years to produce another five titles. So right now, Amazon literally has six Brother Bones titles, uh, two novels. The rest are collections of short stories, most by yours truly, a few, in fact, by other writers who I invited aboard later to play in my sandbox, if you will, and to play with some of these characters in the Brother Bones world. And while we're talking about this, I'm wondering, do you get a good picture of this?
Yes. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. The
This
Grave
this
Tales.
this is the first hardback Airship 27 that's ever produced from Amazon. They started doing hardbacks about a year ago. And Rob said, well, why don't we take the first couple of Brother Bones titles and collect them in a hardback collection? And that's what that is. And it includes the origin story, which is my long way around getting to the fact that once Brother Bones started appearing in print, he became rather popular faster than I had expected, hoped
Hmm.
for, anticipated, to the point where over the last 10 years, in the course of writing all these books and editing others with Brother Bones, not only did we have a role playing company come along and make this hardback role playing module for the world of Brother Bones, um, we had two separate independent film companies at various times option him in to do a small B movies. Unfortunately, they neither of them went to fruition only because getting finance to do B pitches isn't all that easy. I was sorry to see that not happen, but it only cemented the fact that there was a popularity to this particular character that maybe I hadn't tapped completely, that there was still more that could be done. Okay. So, to that fact, after the second film company enterprise came and went, I was left with the screenplay that I had worked out with one of the directors from this small company. And the screenplay itself, we had ultimately decided was going to incorporate the first two Brother Bones stories, i.e., the first story, which is the origin tale. And then the following story dealt with Brother Bones crossing paths with a werewolf in Cape Noir. All right. Because the idea was that this would give us enough material for a 90-minute film. So, working the scenes back and forth, I hammered out how the two stories could work, turned it over to this young director. He hammered out a script, sent it back to me. I did some rewrites on that, and that would have been the film. All right. Well, like I
Hmm.
said, now the film is kaput. It's not going to happen. But I'm left with this screenplay. And the more I'm looking at it, the more I'm thinking, well, maybe, I've done all this with Brother Bones in prose. Wouldn't it be fun to go back to my own, creative roots and turn this into a graphic novel? So over a
Nice.
period of a couple months, using that screenplay as my guideline, I literally wrote a 130-page graphic novel, which is the origin story of Brother Bones. All right. So now I've got that done. It's sitting in my files, pretty much collecting dust for a while because anytime I mention this to any would-be artist that I might know, and I'm told, and I say the words 130 pages, they run for the hills. Okay. So again, I'm asking Rob. Rob and I are doing other projects. In fact, we're doing several projects together, comic book projects, even as we speak. And what happens is 2 years ago at a local convention in Denver, I am sitting across the center aisle from a local artist here in Fort Collins, a gentleman named Joe Arnold. Joe's a talented young newcomer. He's been in the business maybe 5 or 6 years. He recently worked with Mike Barron as the penciler on Mike's independent comic, The Thin Blue Line. And all of us are friends. All of us know each other quite well. So at one lull during the convention, Joe looks up at me from across, the aisle and says, "So what are you up to these days, Ron? You get anything, that maybe I could fool around with?" And I'd forgotten years earlier, I had given Joe a 6-page Brother Bones comics script, which he had illustrated and we had published in an independent black and white comic. What I didn't realize was the impact that had on Joe, because again, answering his question, I said, well, I'll tell you, Joe, I says, I have a 130-page Brother Bones graphic novel sitting at in my files that hasn't gone anywhere for the last 3 years. Joe looks up at me and goes, I'll draw that. I
Nice.
about fell, honestly, Jason, I almost, fell out of my chair. I looked at him and said, hey, please don't pull my leg here. Okay. I mean, he said, no, he said, I'm serious. He says, it's done. I says, yeah. I says, if you want, I said, I'll send you a digital copy after we get home this weekend. He says, please do. Okay. Convention's over. We come back home here to Fort Collins where we live, all of us. And I sent Joe a copy of the, digital copy of the Brother Bones graphic novel. All right. Couple days go by and I get an email from Joe. I want to do this. I want to illustrate this and let's talk more about it. All right. So over the next couple of months, meeting at a local comic shop, which has a nice little cafe in it, and getting some coffee and sitting around and talking, we start hammering it out. And Joe basically says, what I'd like to do is break it up into 4 parts and basically sell it via a funding program. I said, you talking Kickstarter? And he nodded and said, yep. He said, that's what, he said, I've done a couple successfully. He did that one with Mike Barron, as I said, and he's done a
Mhm.
couple of others. So my reply to that was, well, I'm not that big a fan of Kickstarters. I've never been so. Um, to me, it's like I'd much rather just go to an outfit like Kablam and self-publish my comic, take it to conventions, and sell it to fans. But then again, I can understand where artists come from because this is going to be a labor-intensive project for Joe as the artist, the single artist. He was basically going to do everything at one point, which is pencil, ink, and letter.
Mhm.
And so I deferred to him. Otherwise, it wasn't ever going to get done. Otherwise, he was going to be the primary artist, and as I'm well aware of as a comic book professional, the art is the primary story. All right. The visual is the primary story. People buy comics because they're a visual media and they want to look at the art. Sure, they want to read the story, but believe me, if you're sitting at a comic book convention and you're sitting next to an artist and the crowd comes running in, the first person they're going to go to is not the writer. They're going to go to the artist, as
Mhm.
pretty much I would do as a fan myself. So again, like I said, I acquiesced. And I said, all right, Joe. I said, I'm going to let you set up the Kickstarter. Do it the way you want to do it. So another year goes by, and now we're at that point where Joe has finished, I think, something like 53 pages of that 130 pages. In the interim, there were a couple of additions to how we were going to produce this and put it out. The first being is we weren't going to do it in color. That would be cost prohibitive above everything else. And Joe had this idea of grayscaling the artwork. I I was curious, said, all right, show me some pages. Jason, when he did, it again blew my mind. It's perfect for this story. The whole concept of Brother Bones to me, again, is a horror avenger. He's an undead zombie. During the
Mhm.
course of his life, he was a mob hitman and he killed hundreds of people. At the beginning of the story, the origin, he himself buys gets bumped off. But instead of going to heaven or hell, the fates decree that he's to go back down to the earth, back to Cape Noir, this city that exists on the northwest coast in the 1930s, and there become an avenger to protect the innocent people of that town in atonement of his sins. He ends up getting a white skull mask to cover his decomposing face and becomes Brother Bones, the Undead Avenger. It's pretty much the way I describe the concept is the a universal horror monster meets a 1940s Warner Brothers gangster movie.
Mhm. I like it.
That's
I like it.
that's
Yeah.
Brother Bones. Two, two, two film noirs that I particularly love and grew up on. So now the artwork starts coming out. It looks fantastic.
Hmm.
And then we went and recruited my dear friend, artist Mike Belcher, to come on as a letterer. Mike
Nice.
Mike is awesome, multi-talented, and was glad to take it on. Joe, in parceling out the entire graphic novel into sections, had the great idea of, well, why don't we do a portion of the graphic novel, and then in each book will include a bonus short Brother Bone stories if you're willing to write them, he asked me. And I said, of course, glad to. And we'll get guest artists on board to draw those. All right. The first guest bonus feature in volume one is a 6-page short called Nowhere to Hide, which my dear friend Rob Davis illustrated for us and did such a beautiful job. It's absolutely gorgeous. In the process of doing that for us, Rob turned around and volunteered to do the alternate cover. So people signing on to the Kickstarter literally will get a 40-page graphic novel. Like I said, 33 some odd pages of that are going to be by Joe telling the main story. There's the 6-page bonus backup. And I think there's one or two other pinups in it. We have a cover by Joe and we have an alternate cover by Rob. The Kickstarter launched just a little over a week ago. In the first, the goal that Joe set, and again, I had nothing to do with this. I left it up to him, but he set the goal at $2,500. We've so far raised $1,000 in 1 week, which I think surprised both of us a great deal. But at the same time, we've got another $1,500 to go and approximately 20 some odd days to do that.
Hmm. Hmm. And may it be so. May it be so and beyond.
Excuse me?
Yeah. I said, may it be so and beyond,
Oh,
beyond
thank
the
you.
initial mark. And I imagine you have extras, and I'm sure Joe, being a Kickstarter person, has plotted all of those wonderful things for listeners.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I've started making my own little personal videos here in the house, and I made one last week, uh, and basically just to address the Kickstarter thing. I'm well aware. I mean, as all of us are, how crowdfunding has exploded in the comics
Hmm.
world and other, enterprises over the last few years. And there are literally hundreds and hundreds of independent comics every single day that you can find on Kickstarter. So, in making the video, I mean, one of the things that I personally address, i.e., asking, people watching the videos, why should you support ours, in lieu of all those others out there? And I guess my answer was, and I'll share it with you and your viewers here, is A, I think what we're offering is a really reasonable package in, like I said, 40 pages for $10.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
considering what some of the things I've seen on Kickstarter, I think that's a bargain. I
Yeah.
also am familiar, if you go to the Kickstarter link, which I'll share with you, when you look at the finished artwork that's there on display, you'll see that sense of noir that we were trying to capture. It's all there. Joe's artwork is absolutely gorgeous. It's beautiful. And the idea being a good friend posted on Facebook shortly after we'd started the Kickstarter to the effect of, well, uh, money's tight, Ron, he said, and I'm assuming that after you do all 4 chapters, you're probably going to collect them in a graphic novel form. So I'll wait and buy that. Well, he was right. Of course, we want to do a collection eventually. But as I explained, and as is noted on the Kickstarter page itself, part of the reason for this particular sum, this $2,500 that we've set as our goal, is to fund those future chapters. Ergo, if we don't make this goal, then not only will you not see chapter one, but the odds are pretty good you'll probably never see any of this graphic novel ever.
And you do have an established universe here. You have a character that you spent time on with a very iconic look too, a very pulp oriented backstory. In your hands as the storyteller as well.
Well, thank you. I again, and I Joe tells me all the time, and I obviously, got that from him when he was so eager to take the project on, right? And Rob Davis tells me the same thing. I mean, we wouldn't have gotten the interest of not one, but two, independent film companies with the character. All right. Scalcrow Games, and that's T. Glen Game, the people who made the role playing module, wouldn't approach us if they hadn't seen something in this, idea, this
Mhm.
property. So again, I guess I'm the reluctant one, the doubting Thomas here, but on, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that the character is so popular. I'm thrilled that people enjoy the books that we put out. And I'm telling, those people who've signed on and have supported us so far, if you want to, bone up and excuse the pun,
Love it.
on the
Love it.
character, you can always go to Amazon and pick up that first volume, Brother Bones, the Undead Avenger, and read it for yourself. Read, the stories that we've already laid out in preparation for making this graphic novel, become a reality. And then who's to say, if the graphic novel gets off the ground, if it gets wings and we ultimately realize it, that it might not become another flag to the media people.
Hmm. True. True. Yeah. So where would you like to see the character go from here? It sounds like film and other media, and then along with that, you were talking about pulps and revitalizing this genre. Where would you like to see pulps go in the coming years?
Well, I'd like to see, exactly that. I'd like to see the media find new pulp, all right? Because again, it seems like they find the old classics that,
Hmm.
we've seen modern shadow movies made. We saw a Doc Savage movie made back in what, the 70s or whatever.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the people who make these movies have a tendency to camp them up. All right. And what I'd like to see, because there are some really, really good new pulp fiction on the market today, and not only from Airship 27, but our colleagues out there who are publishing, all right, and putting out some amazing work. Recently, there's a company called Blue Planet Incorporated, and
Hmm.
they've done a series of books called Codename Intrepid, which are available at Amazon. And this is a story of an elite squad of military people who work for the War Department just prior to World War II. They're made up of World War I veterans from the Marines, the Army, and Navy, led by an Army aviation Colonel Rick Justice. And these things are pure pulp adventure. I mean, straight out, beginning to end, and would make amazing films. Hey, there's mystery characters galore. We have some amazing writers. Um, 5 to 6 years ago, Rob and I decided, because New Pulp had established itself, and you can see that now when you go to pulp conventions, Jason. We're a force there, all right. We have multiple tables, multiple publishers, and it has revitalized pulp fandom a great deal. And if nothing else, made the readers of what we do interested enough to go back and read the reprints of the classic pulps from the 30s and 40s, which just makes my heart sing, because that was one of the reasons why we established this whole concept of new pulp to keep pulp fandom alive. So um, we actually realized we had so many gifted writers and artists doing this stuff today that just about 5 years ago, Airship 27 actually put out a book called Who's Who in New Pulp. And that's available at Amazon as well. And I think we have a list of well over 200 writers and artists biographies in that book.
Yeah. And modern audiences or postmodern audiences or whatever you want to call contemporary viewers, there is kind of this thing of, well, we've seen this done before, and we've seen 10 of these types of movies, and we've seen this character. So this would be a wonderful way to bring in new stories, new characters, and kind of a new vision of what pulps can offer.
Oh, definitely. I mean, uh, arguably two of the greatest comic book writers still working today, and dear friends of mine, both of them, Chuck Dixon and Mike Barron. All right. And both of them over the last 10 years have, not quit writing the great comics they write, but they've ventured into the prose paperback market, if you will, and are producing series that are, you can literally call, pulp fiction. All right. Recently, Chuck's character, of which he did 12 books, is an ex-Marine, veteran from Afghanistan, who is raising a daughter by himself. He's a widow, and his name is Levon Cade. And this paperback series went 12 issues, and last year, the end of last year, was picked up by Sylvester Stallone's production company and was turned in. The first book was turned into a film called The Working Man, starring Jason Statham. So that's
Mhm.
there you go. I mean that was a big budget, Hollywood type action movie, but based on a new pulp series. And for himself, Mike Barron, in the last 6 or 7 years, or a little longer, has been writing a series of books about an ex-biker who comes out of prison having found Jesus and becomes a private investigator helping people out, named Josh Pratt. And his series
Mhm.
is called Biker. And I'm currently reading volume 11 in that series. And this is modern pulp.
Yeah, yeah. If I am a listener out there, if I want to go find out more about your work and support the Kickstarter, where are some places I might go?
All right. Of course, I have my own page on Facebook, Ron Fortier and Ronald Fortier. I have two pages. It's typical of the Facebook, song and dance, if you will. We also have an Airship 27 page on Facebook. If people would like to check out what I'm doing on a regular basis, I do write a weekly blog, which posts every Friday morning, and that's found at www.airship27.com. And also, if you'd like to look at the Airship 27 title catalog, you just go to www.hangar, HANGAR 27. And that'll take you to the Airship 27 main page where all our titles are listed.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I'm a fan of Brother Bones. I've read the prose. I'm excited about seeing the graphic novel come to be. So, wishing you great success in this and many more volumes to come. And glad to have you back anytime. Did we miss anything that you want to make sure to include?
Not at all, except just to say thanks again, Jason. This is always fun. I really enjoy talking pulps and comics with you. So, again, heartfelt thanks.